Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about working with data that you've loaded into RDS Analyst and a few different ways to change it or sort it differently. So the first thing I will need is a data set. I'm going to use the sample faux Madrona data set, which I can get from the packages and data menu, or I could also type in data faux Madrona. Either would work, and then just open up a data viewer to take a look at it. Okay, so it's a normal RDS data set in recruiter ID format. So we have each respondent has their ID listed and who recruited them to the sample, their network size, and then some other features. Now note that these first few respondents have a recruiter ID of 0. That's because they were seeds, so they started the sampling process. And that also means that they're in wave 0. So one problem you might run across is if data is not coded correctly for RDS Analyst. So I'm going to show you an example of this. So suppose we have, instead of having 0 as a recruiter ID, we have NA, which might make sense for someone coding their data. These respondents weren't recruited, so they don't have a recruiter ID. RDS Analyst doesn't want any NA values or missing values in the recruiter ID field. The same goes for the ID field. So for recruiter ID for the seeds, you just want to put in a value that no other respondents will use. So 0, 999, anything like that should work. And it'll still be clear that they are the seeds because no one will have recruited them, as long as their recruiter ID is not used in the ID field, in other words. Okay, so moving along, I now have this recruiter ID field coded in a not ideal way for RDS Analyst. So what I want to do is click on the console and go in the data menu and go into recode variables. Now you notice that I can go back for a second. I can actually manipulate these values right in the data viewer. I can type 0 there, but I am going to do it this way. And in general, if there's a lot of values to change, this will be faster. So I've got my recode variables dialog open, and I want to work with the faux Madrona data set and recruiter ID variable. So I can just click that arrow over there. Now you notice that recruiter ID to recruiter ID is listed here. That's because right now I have it set so that I'm going to just alter the values in this column. I'm not going to create a new column, but if I did want to create a copy of recruiter ID and maybe a copy where I did some manipulation, I would click on target and I could do something like recruiter 2. I'm going to cancel that right now. Okay, so I want to define the recode here. What I want to do is say that whenever I have an NA value, that's going to become 0. So that's simple, just add that. I have that down here. I press OK, and I can go back here, and now look, all the NAs have gone back to 0. So what else could I do? I'm actually going to open up another data set. Let's look at the faux data set. Go packages and data, faux. Sometimes you need to close the data viewer and open it again just to refresh this list. Okay, and now I have the faux data set. So you can see in the variable view the different types of variables in this data set. I have ID listed as an integer, and I have X and Y, some observed characteristics, listed as factors. So if I want to change these factors at all, I can click here and I can say put red first. That's mostly just going to change the ordering in tables so that it's blue doesn't come first, which it would by default alphabetically. I can also add a factor, so say I can add green, and no one's actually going to have green, but it at least allows for the possibility later, and it would be reported as 0 green as opposed to nothing being reported at all. Okay, but I actually don't want that now, so I'm just going to close that. Okay, so it can also change the name of a factor level, and again I can do that in recode variables. So go into data, recode variables. I want the faux data set now. I'll click on X. And just so you can see, I'll change the target to X. Click on that, change the target to Z. Define a recode, and looking back at this data set, which I can do in the data viewer, or I can do right here, red and blue. Say let's change all the values that were red now into green. Add that, and take this one away. Press OK. And because I changed the name here, we're going to see appear in this data viewer for faux a new column where all the reds are now green and the blues did not change. And now going back to faux Madrona, variable view. Maybe now I want to see all the data sorted by degree. That's pretty simple to do. I just go into data and sort. And I can sort by degree, or I can sort by ID. Let's try that. Press OK. And now it's sorted by ID, but this is actually sorting as though these were words. So 1, 0 comes before 1, 1. If I want to change it so that these sorted as I expected them to, just go into type, change that to integer. Now it's going to sort these as numbers when I ask it to. Data, sort. And sort by ID, it's still there, press OK. And that looks like what I was expecting. So now you've seen there are multiple ways to work with your data, resort values. One more thing you might want to do, I'll just cover quickly, is in the data recode variables, you can change whole ranges. So looking at this faux Madrona data set, say I want to change it so that anything with a degree between 0 and 10 is just reported as 5, say. Go here, define a recode. All you have to do is just use this value field, change that into 5, and that's how you would do that. Okay, but that's it. I think that should help working with missing data especially, and recoding some values.